got 25 minutes. We got to go.
Hey!
Yo, what's going on, guys? Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. We're really excited to have you all with us. If this is your first time here with us on Say That channel, we just want to say welcome. You're in the right place if you are all about the ugly come up of entrepreneurship, because that's what we're
Absolutely.
about. You know how you hear those stories about people who start from the bottom and then they have massive success, and you're wondering what happens in the middle? What happens during the ugly come up? What's the mindset you need to have, the pitfalls you need to circumvent, like all of those things. That's what we're here to talk about here on Say That channel on our Wednesday shows. Super excited. We have a great topic today, like always. I'm really excited to talk about today's topic. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like and the ding 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 notification bell.
Yeah, guys, that goes a long way and we really appreciate it. So let's jump into today's topic.
Can cutting jobs for profit be justified during economic downtimes?
Yeah, great question, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's think about this. Many of us are budding entrepreneurs. We've just started. So, like, do you have staff? Do you have people that you employ? Is it like on a contract basis, right? So you might be thinking like, I don't have employees. I don't know why we're asking this question, but think about this, right? Like, scale up. You're going to get bigger. You're going to grow. And so when that happens, right, you may have some people hired by contract. You may have full out employees.
Yeah.
That you're like blessing and helping other people's families, sustain. And then you're trying to cut costs because you're like, ooh, this is not sustainable. But yet we're in inflation right now. Nobody wants to say that we're in a recession.
Yeah.
But let's say we're in a recession, or you happen to be in a recession when you're having to make this decision. Like, man, it's really bad, right? During recession, usually jobs are not in abundance, right? And so you could be firing somebody, and that means their livelihood is now at stake, but you're doing it because you need to keep the costs low for the sake of the company. Otherwise, your business may not exist, right? If you keep employing these people.
I think that's that aspect of, if you look at it from, how far this could go. But in some instances, I think it's just a question of people, an owner looking just to make a profit or be able to, after, paying a sizable amount of employees or few employees, how much they're looking to take home. And I know when this question came in, they were in reference to the recent Amazon cuts, across the entire tech industry, Spotify, LinkedIn, a lot of these tech companies, have let people go. And I know we're thinking of just, budding entrepreneurs right here, but when you're looking at these large companies, these guys have an obligation to stockholders to provide a certain level of return on these people's investments. And at the end of the day, when your numbers aren't, hitting what they need to, and you need to make up the bottom line, the first thing that's going to go is an employee. That's the salary that you can take right off the books, and you count that, put you back in the black when you have that happening. So I think this is one of the things we preach as being entrepreneurs, is this idea that if you're working for someone else, this is one of the ramifications that can come from someone else, essentially kind of dictating to the point you're making, Janelle, your livelihood. It's kind of like, how do you win?
And I think that's the thing. The larger the company is, I mean, you're talking about stakeholders, stockholders, all this stuff, right? Like, the larger the company is, the less of a human connection there is. So if you're a budding business owner, you probably know all of your employees,
all the people that work for you by name. Know their family, everything like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it is probably harder for you to make those decisions, to like have to, fire people or no longer use their services. Yeah, I think it's harder for us than it is when you have a larger company. I think to that end, things might, when you're just starting off, you probably, I don't know. I'm going to say something. You tell me if I sound completely crazy for saying this, but I just feel like when you're just starting out and you go ahead and you employ your first employee, or, get your first contract worker or something like that, you're so caught up, or you're paying so much attention to the amount of money your business makes and how will this help your bottom line, like how will this help the company exist, period, forget
Mhm.
profits, like you're just trying to like exist. So I feel like it's less likely that you take on this risk for, for being an employee for a small business owner. Again,
Mhm.
there's a human aspect, they know you, right? Versus when you work for a large company, I just feel like they just make cuts left, right, and center. I'm like, so
You
those
see,
things just really aren't thought about. So to me, it feels like it might be a less of a risk to be let go from a small company. But maybe I'm saying something that doesn't make sense at all.
I think the risk is the same. I mean, because what we're really just assessing is let the loss of an income. You know what I mean? I don't know, to the if we look at numbers, we can maybe see statistics as to how easily, or the turnover in a small company. I think we even made this statement before, even when we look at network marketing. We were talking about some of the larger leaders who would tell you how many people they lost in their organizations compared to the turnovers that you and I may have looked at in our business. And to me, when they used to give the perspective of, when you have an organization of 30,000 and you lose 1,000 a day, you're complaining when you only have 5 and you're a director. Things like that is, I think, is the equivalent. When you and I knew the people we were losing in our organization, it's way different when your organization's in 5 countries and Sam in Detroit just quit your business or your downline. So I don't think the human component always plays a role. When you're the person that's in the seat of running a large organization, or maybe one of those people, you have to recognize, and I think this is why many businesses fail, is you do look at it as a human component. And guys, you have to remember, the people who get let go into the marketplace, it's okay at times, because these people have the opportunity to reinvent themselves. Many people have learned to, again, through being entrepreneurs, do different things from having being let go from a place that they thought was the only opportunity they were ever going to have. So I think perspective is huge when it comes to this. You know what I mean? And to the point you were making, Janelle, I find that, again, if we look at it just from a numbers game, if every company maybe had a more humane way of letting people go, I think eat leaders eat last.
Mm.
Gosh,
Simon
his name.
Sinek.
Simon Sinek, thank you. He talks about this in a huge way when he talks about people leaving companies and the
Mm,
way they could do it, where they could move on to other things. There
mm,
just definitely needs to be a different level of communication that comes into this whole system of letting people go from one jump company, because people can be rerouted to other companies through a better way of then just throwing them back out into the job market and telling them to go find work themselves. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
But at the end of the day, guys, if you don't make these cuts, in some instances, your companies aren't going to, again, provide the profits they need to continue growing. The market is being affected by a lot of these things when companies fail, or when companies' numbers don't reflect the promises that they made to their stockholders. So again, there are a lot of pieces, there are a lot of moving pieces, I would say, to this question. But I know it's not just us that we're going to share our thoughts on it. So.
no,
What
we've
do you
got
think?
the fellas from Earn Your Leisure again.
Right.
They're gonna give us a take on all of this, so let's hear what they got to say.
All right, let's do it.
Amazon job cuts finally hit profitability after cutting 27,000 employees. So, is this a step in the right direction for the company?
Unfortunately,
I'm
yes,
glad you started with
because
that word. I'm glad you started
yes,
with that.
unfortunately.
Mike, go double screen here, Mike.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. It's not a measure that I think they wanted to take when we talked about it, and I talked about this with Stock Club. Their profit margins aren't as high. I think because they had such a stranglehold on market share. Like when I think of shopping, I think Amazon first.
Mhm.
Then if it's food related, I go Uber Eats, right? Shadi, I don't win the same tribe when it comes to that. But what they didn't focus on enough was getting a profit margin up so they didn't have to do this. I think Amazon, like Apple, needs a little bit more innovation. But the thing that has saved Apple is the wide margins that they have on the hardware business and their illegal mob when it comes to getting the 30% out of every company in the App Store.
Wow.
So it is a step in the right direction. I don't like companies that cut jobs first as a way to raise profitability. I think there needs to be a lot more innovation. They need to figure out their pricing structure a lot better. But for the time being, this is going to benefit them.
This is a small glimpse into the world of economics in the United States.
Yep.
People are going to have to lose jobs for companies a lot of times to hit their bottom line.
Yeah.
And if you look at the cycle of Amazon, we went over this 2 years ago. Every 4 years, they focus on infrastructure. I'm glad Aman was talking about that. Infrastructure is important to them. And so that costs AWS, I mean, which is his saving grace every quarter. If you look at their quarters, if you looked at last week, AWS is its saving grace. It could be its own company on its own, but that costs, right? The amount of money that goes into AWS, and rightfully so, it's his breadwinner. But you heard what he just talked about when they're getting into AI, Anthropic. This is a very pricey endeavor. And so they have to have a certain amount of capital allocated to this, or they're going to get left behind. So we're talking about pairing, and we already saw who Google's pairing with. We saw who Microsoft is pairing with. Amazon has to pair, and so they have. $4 billion was the number that they set up to, but I'm sure it's going to exceed that, right?
Yeah, it's going to pass that for sure,
right? So the infrastructure, the only part that they can find where can we save money, because we're always going to keep our prices low when it comes to the e-commerce side. This is what gives us the competitive moat, right? Our prices are better than the competitors, plus we can get it to you faster. That side is not going to change. What can change is, can we do more with less? And a lot of companies have done this, and you saw that over the past 2 years. A lot of companies have decided, yes, we can do more with less, and by less, we're talking about staffing. And so when you see jobs get cut, this is the reason, because they need to have more capital on the bottom line to make sure that, number one, the infrastructure will be in place, but from a standpoint of expanding from the world of technology, that they're always on par with their competitors, so they can stay as one of those magnificent seven, which I think they will. I've said this for 3 years in a row. It's my favorite company. I think from a standpoint of having an ecosystem, they're in a perfect position, right? Even when we talked about Apple, and obviously it's the wealthiest company in the history of the United States, but we can see a slight dent, right? If we continuously, and we said this last week, if there's no innovation inside of the phones, and that makes up for 50% of the revenue, there's a dent there. I feel like Amazon's ecosystem, when we're talking about where they can go in healthcare, right? Where they can go in transportation, where they can go in e-commerce, and they can go in AI, it's so vast. So I like that ecosystem, but this is a casualty of it. This is a part of it. So I think, is it a direct direction? Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah. And if Microsoft put in $10 billion for the partnership with OpenAI, they're going to have to spend more than $4 billion. Unfortunately, they may have to get up to 6.5, 7. So yeah, they have to free up some capital. It's unfortunate, but they have to do it in order to survive. And like you say, if it wasn't for AWS, we would be having a dramatically different conversation. Amazon has been the top 4 stock pick in Red Panda for 5 years. If they didn't have AWS, it'd probably be 11th. To be honest, AWS is a saving grace.
Yeah, it's the shining star of the company by far. It's not even close. But cloud service is needed, and if we're going into a space where we have to have storage, it's perfect. It's the perfect place for the future if we're talking about data storage, and they have it, and they're the leader in it. Microsoft right behind, but as of now, AWS is leading the way.
Can we talk about this cheesecake situation real quick and get out of here?
Yeah, well, let's do. I mean, I want one thing. What I wanted to just ask one question before we do that. What's the best business? 2 questions actually, but what's the best business to build in a recession? Because I think that's something that's important.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's really key. And I think people will keep skating over this point. It's the business that changes someone's lives. Like Rashad, you pointed to it. I think you can go an entertainment clout-driven route, or you can choose to have an impact in someone's life. A lot of times when people are building businesses, I think they're copying other people, but not knowing the impact. I was talking to Ish about this earlier, and we're talking about like rates and stuff like that. And I'm like, most of the people in broadcasting don't get paid a lot, because what is the value that they're giving? You're really just helping a lot of people pass time at work. But when you're able to transfer someone's life, like a Microsheet has, or like how we have with the show, or EYL, like the people that have made other people money, made their marriages better. Like if you look at Oprah back in the day, there was a service she provided in her broadcast that made people's lives actually better. So I think the best business to build in a recession is one that is actually going to change people's lives for the better. And there's not enough of that being done. There's too many copies of a copy. I don't need a Airbnb for German Chihuahua mixed with iguanas in Atlanta. Like, and oh boy, on your ass about that food in Atlanta. Tighten up.
I saw
tighten up. You better tighten up. Listen, I want to wait 55 minutes outside the hookah lounge when I can just bring you to the Airbnb, the hotel. Tighten up.
He went to Atlanta Breakfast Club. Did you go another one after that?
Who is this?
Yeah.
Food reviews, intense
food reviews. He had Atlanta on fire.
People was trying to shut us.
Intermezzo. Y'all still ain't did nothing about when my car got stolen either.
Yeah.
What we doing? I like y'all. Yo, shrimp Alfredo, all that fire. Okay. Hey,
the consensus is that the food has been pretty good. The service has been pretty terrible.
Yeah,
he went to Little Baby's restaurant too.
Oh, I ain't go to Little Baby's restaurant, but I mean, all the places. I mean, we have good experiences in Atlanta. We have good culinary experiences.
I think it's all right. It's cool.
Shout out. Well, all right.
Not. Well, I didn't want to confuse the Atlanta Breakfast Club with Breakfast at Barney. Some people do that. Breakfast at Barney's I don't think he's going there yet. Shout out to Barney. That's one of our spots that we frequent a lot.
But what do you guys think? I know the vultures wouldn't answer this, but what business should you build in a recession?
Yeah.
Need-based business. I would look to see whatever, I mean, that sounds like a cliche answer, but it's the truth, right? Like during
network marketing grows in this
when
industry.
we started Earn Your Leisure, it was just I felt like it was a need for financial education, financial media, and it wasn't actually we got another idea that we're gonna start. There's another need in the media space.
We followed up with those guys. Great content, guys. We'll make sure we tag that episode to the end of this one for anybody who wants to go back and check out what those guys are having to talk about. Do you know the food thing he's referring to?
No.
Okay. So
what's AWS?
Amazon Web Service. So that's literally Amazon's bread and butter comes in from the revenue they get from the services they provide through that entity. And again, Amazon is a massive company, guys. So we were talking about it when we were talking about this episode, when I was saying, it's a book company, it's shipping. I mean, it has so many different things under this one umbrella, hence why it's, the size it is. But the review thing he was talking about is there's a guy who went out to Atlanta, went to these different restaurants, and he has a lot of followers, a lot of influence, but the service he was receiving at these restaurants, he said, was atrocious. And this is from a person who typically gets, people go above and beyond to kind of, give him the best experience that they can give him. And he said it was terrible, and how this is one of the reasons why Black businesses suffer is because the service aspect. He goes, just because we're Black, we think we're supposed to patronize each other's business, and that's such a negative mindset to have. But it's why a lot of businesses he feel are suffering. And so and he went to some other places that were white owned, and so there are a lot of restaurants now in Atlanta that were getting a lot of props where there are now white owned restaurants there who are being given a lot of praise. So there's a lot of the whole cultural thing. But anyway, I digress.
Well, okay. Number one, thank you for sharing what AWS is, because I did not know. And so Amazon's website service, meaning like the app that you go on to purchase your products, or what?
So Amazon does drop shipping. So you guys know of like GoDaddy, things like that. Amazon also hosts companies' websites because they have their own pages. Like when those people now create their drop shipping sites, Amazon, the company that hosts that. In order for you to have your own business, your own page on Amazon, you're paying Amazon. I mean, again, it's an amazing system that these guys.
This totally makes sense to me, because this is what it's like to sell a book. When you're selling a book, go to KDP. It's
yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Kindle distributing. Publishing or something like that. Yeah. And
I have to use them even with Amazon in order to get your thing through Amazon.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So I learned that through my process, but now I understand what you're saying. Like, I just thought like, it just ends up on Amazon, but I didn't realize like Amazon has like a
company
separate, yeah, like a company that they do that through. That's super cool. Interesting.
So, go ahead.
Okay, so number one, if you are not the only one like me who was wondering what AWS is, please put it in the chat. Put "not alone" in the chat. Just let me know. And I noted, he said 27,000 people let off. Now, please remember there are 300 million people who live in the United States. So 27,000, at first I was like, that's a really big number. But then I was like, oh, but 300 million. Okay. So like putting it in perspective, that's a lot of people, but not like, it's still kind of a drop in a bucket considering how many people live in the United States. So I just thought that was interesting. In terms of what you were saying, Winston, like you gotta sometimes it's the easiest way to like make sure that your company makes it, right? Like is in the black. Like it's just easier, like they said, to do more with less.
Well, so that's the thing. There are points that they brought up that I didn't consider to some degree. It's not necessarily the easiest. It's also, guys, and we've done episodes, we talked about AI. Something that they were discussing was that these companies, these big companies, Apple, Microsoft, these guys are merging with AI companies. I mean, that's where these businesses need to integrate now the products that they have with the best AIs that's out there. And in doing so, you're going to have some jobs that are not going to be necessary moving forward. And then the other part they were talking about was in order to come up with the capital, they're talking about they're already committed to investing $4 billion. These guys think they need to at least get up to $6.5 billion. $2.5 billion needs to come from someplace. And if you're not making it on the product side, because they mentioned the margins are so thin, they're just not bringing in enough. You got to make it from internal decisions. And again, that's where you have people that are going to get let go. I think another thing, and they were talking about this in something I was reading, where a lot of the drawback from people who are, I guess, we saw that remote was an option for a lot of companies. A lot of these companies also realized, hey, we probably had more people here than we needed. Because, and this is something everyone's very familiar with, we can get rid of this one person and have this other person take on the responsibilities of this, someone that we're letting go. It's like it's not new in any shape or form, to fire one person, give somebody a promotion with a new title, the pay, they increase your pay a fraction of what they just got off their books with the salary they just released, but they just tack on a few more responsibilities to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. That happens all the time. I'm like, what's happening in my job? What I was thinking is the last part. Interestingly enough, I was like all about that last question. So what business is recession?
Oh, what to do, yeah.
I love that question, and I love their answers for what it's worth. To me, that seemed super helpful. Like find the thing that has the largest impact that can actually change someone's life. And then to Rashad's point, he was like, oh, well, like whatever's like the most needed. But to me, yes, there's a need, but people typically buy what they want, not what they need. And so if you want to impact your life, that to me goes back to the like, you want to have a change in your life. You want something to like be different in your life. And so that like, if you're offering me that, yeah, I'm gonna get that because that's what I want. It may not necessarily be what I need though. So I agree with both answers. I thought it was really interesting. And that also requires us as entrepreneurs to like really sit and think about what we're doing and what we're offering. Does it fulfill a need? Does it fulfill the idea of like having a major impact on someone's life?
Oh, that's a great way of looking at it. Because I definitely thought they were addressing the audience they believe watches the show, which aren't consumers. It's actually, entrepreneurs, just like, we're trying to help as well. And if you're addressing that audience, it definitely helps put them in that mindset of, oh, am I providing a need? To give like an actual answer instead, I think it's one of the things we all looked at. Network marketing is an industry that recession over recession over recession continues to grow because to your point, Janelle, there's going to be a consumer base where they buy during hard times to cope with things. And I'm just talking, not to be cold, but that's just the reality of, what it is to be in sales and marketing. These people buy to kind of cope with difficult times. And there, if you can get into the right company, provide a good service, provide a good product, that's something on the side that you can be doing, just in terms of everybody's not ready to make that full jump. You know,
No, 100%. Because a lot of
that kind of stuff as well.
A lot of the products and services from network marketing companies have a huge impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
So that lines up exactly to what they were saying.
Definitely.
I love this. All right. We want to hear from you guys. Please put your comments. What did you think they should have answered for what's the business that's recession proof? We want to hear from you. Don't forget to share this video with somebody. If you think that this was really helpful, please share. It just helps us and the algorithm and all of that. So thank you so much.
And guys, we're off next week. Guys, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Anybody who will be traveling, definitely make sure you get to your location safe. We'll be off for Wednesday, but make sure you guys go check out our Monday rundowns. We'll still have those going. And until we see you guys again, as always, remember, you deserve the good life. Say that. We'll see you.